Okay, so we're going to continue on with our characteristics of living things, and we're going to kind of hone in on that concept of reproduction. Remember, that's the fourth characteristic of living things is reproduction, okay? And this is how we get new organisms. How do we get more of an organism? Because we have to be able to do that or a species will die out. So we call that reproduction. And before you get weird on me and you think of that word like, oh no, she said reproduction and ew, you guys, the word reproduction simply means to make more of. To make more of, and I'm not very good at drawing with this thing. I'm going to try to do better. Okay, simply to make more of. So if I handed you a worksheet and I said, here, I need you to go reproduce this, I just want you to go make copies. You're going to go to the printer or the copier down the hall and you're going to make a bunch of copies of them. That's reproduction, okay? So reproduction is not anything to get upset or worried about. It's simply just to make more of something, okay? And just remember, this is a characteristic of living things. Living things have to be able to do this, or the species will die out and go extinct. Pause the video right now and add reproduction to your notes and the definition, please. Now, there are two ways that organisms can reproduce. Two ways. The first way is called asexual reproduction. Asexual. And so in our English or ELA classes, we are studying stems. The stem A means not, okay? Not. So not sexual reproduction. And before you get weird on me again, sexual doesn't mean boy-girl kissy face relationship stuff. Sexual in science simply just means a male cell and a female cell that combine. Okay, that's our definition for the word sexual. So we're saying not male cell and female cell combining. So this is not male and female together. This is one parent. Okay, the organism grows a new organism on its body, and it only takes one parent. So make sure that when you write this down, you get that key component, one parent. Now you might be thinking to yourself, what in the world? How does somebody just have one parent? Well, let's look at that. Clearly that wasn't you. A hydra is a water-dwelling creature, okay? And before we go further with that, this is not the hydra that's in Percy Jackson, okay? That's the mythological hydra. This is a real creature that lives in water, and the hydra will grow. If you look right here, it is already growing its new organism on the side of its body, okay? And that is one parent. The hydra is its only parent, and this thing is growing off the side of it. Would you go ahead and pause the video right now, write two ways that organisms can reproduce, and do number one, asexual, and write your definitions, please. So the process of asexual reproduction for a hydra is called budding. Budding. And so it grows a little bitty bud on the side, and then this bud kind of develops a little bit, and it gets those little tentacle looking things at the top, and it grows even more, and now it's getting heavier, and then it completely breaks off of the parent and becomes its own new organism. It will then plant itself somewhere in the bottom, and then it will start this whole process again itself. So pause the video right now and add the word budding and a tiny little description if you'd like to. All right, just showing you really quick, there's nothing for you to write down on this slide. These are just more examples of asexual reproduction. Here's that hydra again. This is called a spider plant. I think my grandma used to call them airplane plants. But they grow a big ball at the end of a tentacle. It looks like a tentacle. It sends this runner out and then grows a whole nother little baby plant on the end. You literally can break these off and plant them, and it becomes a whole new plant. You've got a sponge right here, and a part of it would break off, and then it would literally become a whole new sponge that plants itself in the bottom of the water, okay, on the floor of the water, of the ocean or whatever. Okay, wild strawberry plants, same thing. They have these runners that are these little things that come out of the side, and then a new plant will grow off of those. Okay, it only took one parent. Now, the other way that living things or organisms can reproduce is called sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction. And please remember, that definition of sexual is simply a male cell and a female that combine. Okay, so now we're going to have two parents. Two parents. And you have to have cells from those two parents, and those cells will have DNA in the center of them. We're going to study the cell, but really quickly, you have a cell, and in the nucleus is a bunch of DNA. Okay, and that's what we're talking about. We're getting DNA from both parents, so we're getting cells from two parents that combine. Make sure you write down two parents. That's the big difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. Pause the video right now and add this to your notes, and make sure you have these other things written down. All right, so in sexual reproduction, you have to have a female and you have to have a male, okay? And the female gives one kind of cell, and that's called an egg. Inside that egg cell, right in the center of the nucleus, is your DNA. And DNA is simply just a recipe on how to make a new organism. And the male gives a different kind of cell, and that is a sperm cell. And in those sperm cells, they have DNA in the center, and it's the recipe. The DNA from this one, the DNA from this one combine, and they make a new organism that begins to grow. Go ahead and pause the video and write this down. All right, we're going to look at the female anatomy first. Now, granted, this is a human female anatomy because we're going to have to study anatomy in a later unit, so it's just really good to go ahead and just start with that. I could have put the anatomy of a female cow. I could put the anatomy of a female cat here. Human is just something that we can associate with because we're humans, so let's go ahead and do it, okay? And careful, boys, because we're going to put you up here next, so respect and kindness throughout this whole part. This is called a uterus, and in the, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go ahead and erase that first, and let's go back a little bit. This big piece here, this whole thing here, is called a uterus. So let's go ahead and write that down. I'm getting better at writing. Good job, me. Okay, it's called a uterus, and this uterus is part of the female anatomy. Now, when a female is born, okay, when she's a baby and she's born, she is born with a full set of eggs, okay? So here's these sacs right here called ovaries. There's an ovary, that's an ovary, and inside this ovary are all these little eggs. And a female is born with about 1 million, give or take. And they just sit there. They're just going to sit in the body for years, okay? And these eggs won't be of use until the female starts puberty, okay? So once the body is at a certain age, and it varies for everyone, it can be anywhere from about the age of 9 to even as old as 18, okay? So ladies, if you have not started puberty yet, you're not broken. It just means your body's not ready. It says, hey, we're just not quite ready for this, okay? So as your body is monitoring itself and it decides that it's time for puberty to start, it turns on your hormones. Okay, and your hormones signal your body to start some new processes. Now, with these hormones come some awesome feelings, right? Ladies, for you, when your hormones start working, you get weepy. Like you're sitting there and you're like, oh, this is just so sad. I just don't even know why I'm crying. Okay. That's totally normal because the estrogen that your body is producing, the hormone, is kind of triggering that. In males, they get kind of edgy. They get a little aggressive, and they might get mad for no reason. And that's because their hormone causes that. Now, I promise you it's going to level out at some point. You know, when you're closer to 18, your body's going to get used to it, and it's going to say, hey, okay, this is a normal thing now. I know what to expect, and you'll kind of mellow out a little bit. But you're going to feel pretty weird for a good number of years. Now, when this hormone starts telling your body to start new processes, some things happen in females. The first thing is that this uterus is going to start saving up blood, and I am doing a horrible job at drawing that. Let me erase that and do better. All right, it's going to tell you to start, and let's get some red, not yellow. Start storing up some blood here, okay? And it's just going to sit there. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit in the body, okay? Now, the next thing that happens is it's going to tell this egg right here, hey, it's time for you to release. And so your body will release one egg. And this egg will come out of the ovary, and it will then start going up through this tube, and this tube is called a fallopian tube. You don't have to know that yet, but when we do anatomy, you'll have to learn that. And the egg is going to come into the uterus, and it's going to just sit there. Let's make the egg blue, okay? And it's just going to sit there, and it's going to wait, and it'll sit there for about, I don't know, 15 to 18 days. It'll just sit there. And if it does not get fertilized, okay, if it does not get fertilized, then the body says, okay, you don't need to be here anymore. Nothing's happening. It's not time to make a new organism. So it just kind of flushes it out of the body. It sends the egg out, and it sends the blood out. And this is called a period or the menstrual cycle. Okay. And this is going to start happening every month. Once the female starts puberty and starts developing and starts that whole process, now it's going to happen every month, and it's going to happen for like 50 years, so or 40 years. So this is just the beginning, and then every single month, like about every 28 days, not 28 days exactly, because we are all different. You say, oh, I get mine every 29. I'm broken. No, you're not broken. All bodies are different. Okay. Now, let's take this back a little bit. If the egg, let's go to take these off. If the egg is sitting in the uterus, and I'm going to go ahead and draw another egg there, and it does get fertilized, which means it comes in contact with sperm. We'll do the sperm in green. There's a sperm there, and it fertilizes that egg, okay? Then something different happens, okay? That fertilized egg, and now that it's fertilized, we're going to make it yellow. Actually, let me erase that. And we'll go with, how about we'll go with purple. Let's see if that'll stand out. Now we have a fertilized egg there. It's combined with the sperm. It's going to go right over here and really just lay down on the side of the uterus in the blood. Now that blood is simply going to feed that little thing called a zygote. It's now called a zygote because it's fertilized. It's going to feed it and give it oxygen and nutrients, okay? From this point forward, this little zygote is just going to continue to grow into a baby, okay? We then call it a fetus and then a baby, and it will continue just to stay in the uterus and grow, okay? Now, one thing to notice is you've got eggs also over on this side. Don't forget, you've got eggs over here, and these eggs will be released. So usually if you get an egg out on this month and it goes over here the next month, it would go over here. Okay, it would come from the other side and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay, and that's what females bring to the reproduction, the sexual reproduction side. Okay, remember, this could be any kind of organism that reproduces this way. This is cows, cats, dogs, bunnies, etc. Okay. Now, let's look at the male portion, and I left the external anatomy off because 7th graders get weird about that. We are going to look at anatomy and do anatomy when we get further on in the school year, but for now, let's just look at the internal section of the male reproduction, okay? And so, this is how baby boy is born. He's born with these pieces. Now, the one thing he's not born with is sperm. he does not come complete with sperm in his body. As a matter of fact, he's not even going to make any until he goes in puberty. So once he starts puberty, then the body will say, okay, time to make sperm. And so it'll start making sperm inside of these little sacs. And these sacs are called testes. Okay, we're going to use the proper term. Believe me, I know all the slang, but that's not what we're about. We're about being professional and studious. And so he makes the sperm, and then when it's time for the sperm to come out, it goes through this tube and then exits the body, okay? This sperm, or these sperm cells, are the part that the male provides to the reproductive system and what the male provides to make that new organism to start growing, okay? So remember that in a reproduction or a sexual reproductive encounter, you have an egg here. You have one egg, okay, and inside that egg is the DNA over here, okay. It's got all the genetic information from mom, and each of these sperm have the DNA in them, okay, which is the genetic recipe from dad, and only one of these is actually going to break through the egg and fertilize it. Only one of these, and there's about 300 million to one egg. And I always get students every year that say, well, what if? No, one sperm, one egg. And here's a picture that shows a sperm trying to break through and get into that other egg. Okay, once that sperm gets in there, we say that it fertilizes, and they combine their DNA, their recipes, and that new recipe they make is what causes the new organism to grow. Okay, now there are two ways that this can happen. All right, there's two types of sexual fertilization, and this one is called external. Notice we have Finding Nemo over here, and that didn't show up. Let's try a different color. We have Finding Nemo here, and here's all of those eggs, okay? And Cora and Marlin are looking at their little eggs and watching them grow. Well, basically, the female fish just drops her eggs in a hole in the ocean, or in a little hole in the lake. Okay, she just drops her eggs there, and then she may just swim away. The male then comes behind her at some point and drops his sperm in there, and then he may swim away. These eggs are going to get fertilized, and they're just going to grow right there. Okay, and they're going to form new babies right there in the hole in the bottom of the ocean. Okay, this happens outside of the body. Whoops, I'm not doing very good here. This happens outside of the body, and that's why we call it external fertilization. Pause the video and write that down right now. All right. Internal fertilization is what we were talking about just a minute ago. This is where the baby in the zygote is going to be fertilized inside the mom. Okay, so here's her big tummy, and inside the mom is that uterus, okay? So here's that uterus that the baby is in, and it's just going to grow inside the mom's tummy, or inside the mom's uterus, okay? This is not external because it's happening inside, internal. And you say, wait a second, Mrs. Burton, that does not look like the same uterus you just showed us a picture of. Well, it's because the uterus stretches. It has to, in order for the baby to grow and grow and grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger. You saw a flat uterus that didn't have to stretch because there was nothing in it. This is what it looks like when the baby has gotten pretty big. Okay, so it's a pretty amazing organ that's very, very flexible. Okay, pause the video and write down internal and write down the definition, please. All right, so now you might be thinking, okay, there are only two kinds of cells, one male and one female. How in the world do we get male and female babies then? That's two different kinds, and we only have what we need to make one kind. Well, there's a little twist in this. All female eggs are called X cells. That's how science codes them. They code them as X's. And so all female eggs are X. They're all exactly the same. The difference comes from the male sperm. Males make either X sperm or Y sperm. So they have two kinds of sperms. All right. So there you can see that the different combinations come from the sperm. So if we look at a picture of it, we have an X sperm right here. All eggs are X. Okay. They never change. That gives us a female that is XX. So all females, all of you girls listening to this, you are XX. That is your genetic code. Okay. All males are made from Y sperm. You get a Y sperm and all eggs are X's, remember? So then you get XY and that makes a male. So pause the video right now and write this down. These are the only two options for sex genetically, okay? Physically and genetically, there are only two possible combinations. I know that there are conversations about all kinds of other genders and things like that. That is not what we're going to cover in here. I just want to make the point and show you that genetically, on a cellular level, there are only two options, and that is XX female or XY male. All right, so this is just a review that XX is female and that XY is a boy. All right, now we're looking at sex-linked traits, and there's another term that's used, and sometimes it's just called an X-linked trait. X-linked traits. Okay, these X-linked or sex-linked traits are things that are carried on the X chromosomes. So here we have some X chromosomes, and notice they all look the same. You've got a girl here that's XX. Then you look at the boy over here, and you see something that looks different, okay? You see something right there, and he's an XY. What's going on with that Y? Well, the Y chromosome is smaller than the X chromosome. It's missing a part. And so if we look at them from the side, you have your X right here and you have your Y right here. You can see that that Y is missing a whole section. And so there are some things that are carried up here that the Y does not have. Now, when the X and the Y have the same thing, like right here, you have these two are exactly the same and they match up. That can be eye color. Maybe dad's is for brown eyes and mom is for blue eyes, and they argue and arm wrestle and brown wins and the baby has brown eyes. Is there anything up here to arm wrestle with this X over here with the A and the B? No. And because there's nothing there to arm wrestle, that's going to cause some problems, or can cause some problems. The things that are located there can't be shut off or arm wrestled with, and so these boys will have a certain trait. Go ahead and pause the video right now and make some notes on X-linked or sex-linked traits, please. All right, so what are some of these sex-linked or X-linked traits? Well, one of them is red-green color blindness. The mom will carry the trait for the baby to be colorblind, and if it is a Y next to it, it will not fight it off, so the baby's going to be born and that baby will be colorblind. Red-green deficiency is if you can't see the number 74 in this diagram. Red and green looks the same. As a matter of fact, I've been told by my dad, who is colorblind, that everything looks brown. You can't see the difference between green and red. It's all brown. I say, hey, Dad, what color is this tomato? Brown. What color is this grape? Brown. So they can't tell the difference, and they have, there's an inability to be able to see different colors like that. So here's some other kinds of color blindnesses that you could get. This is normal vision. This is what the picture is supposed to look like. But these are some other ways that colorblind people may see that picture. Okay? So color blindness is one of those things. Another one, you guys, is male pattern baldness. The X can carry different versions of baldness on there, and if the Y can't cover it up, if that X has this on there, then that child may be bald someday when they're older. Okay? And these are simple and not real serious things that we have to talk about as far as sex-linked or X-linked traits, but there are some serious things. Pause the video right now and write these two things down, and then be ready to go on to the next thing, which is actually quite more serious. All right, hemophilia. Hemophilia is an X-linked trait that is far more serious than just being bald or colorblind. When someone who does not have hemophilia, just a regular old person like you and I, cut our skin, we make a hole in it, and the blood can flow freely out until we have these little platelets here and here and here, and those platelets will combine with our blood cells, and they will make a big blood clot that plugs the hole. Then you form a scab and your body starts healing, okay? Here's the problem. Hemophiliacs have less platelets or no platelets, depending on how severe they have it. And so when they cut themselves, here's us, we plug the hole. This person will bleed for a while and then they can finally plug it. But look at this moderate and severe. Are they going to be able to plug those holes? No. And so if they don't go seek medical treatment and some of the modern medical medicines that they have, they could literally bleed to death. Something that wouldn't even phase us. We may bleed for a few minutes and for a little bit and then go, oh, okay, it stopped. They could literally bleed to death if they don't get help. So you can see how this X-linked or sex-linked trait is far more serious. This affects 1 in 5,000 births in males. Now, this does not mean you can't have a female hemophiliac, but they are very rare, and that's an instance when both X's had hemophilia on them, or one of them just simply didn't override the other. Okay, but it's far more rare. And it's the same thing with color blindness, and the same thing with balding. You can have females that are colorblind, and you can have females that have a balding pattern, but it's super rare. Super rare. Okay? All right, so the last thing that we're going to talk about really quickly is how we get twins. How we get twins. And the first way is going to be fraternal. And fraternal twins are about 1 in every 32 births. Okay, 1 in every 32 births. And this is simply when nature, remember earlier when I was talking about the female cycle, you release one egg and it goes in there and sits and waits in the uterus. Well, this is when nature has a little bit of a laugh. It says, nah, we're going to give you not only 1 egg, but how about egg number 2? So the body releases 2 eggs, and there are 2 eggs sitting in that uterus. Well, if you have 2 sperm that then come and fertilize both eggs, then you don't have 1 baby growing, you now have 2. Okay? These 2 babies are completely separate. They don't share a placenta. They don't share anything. The only thing they share is just the uterus. They are no different than just a regular brother and sister. They just happen to be born at the same time. Okay? These are twins that you can look at them and go, y'all are twins? You don't even look alike. Okay? They can be boy, 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 girl, 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 because it's 2 different sperm that are fertilizing them. Okay? But we also have a different situation, and that one we're going to cover tomorrow.